This is the first time any of these guys have been out there in wet conditions. Really important to be able to try and push hard on this lap as well, so that you can see what the grip level's like, see where the puddles are, see if there's anywhere where the rain does tend to collect and drain towards. So this is a very important couple of minutes for all these riders to be able to go out there and get as much information as possible.
And why are we so excited about seeing rain ahead of a championship decider? Well, I'll tell you why. Firstly, because Jonathan Rea is the rider who trails in points. He's 30 down on Toprak Razgatlioglu, and he is a wet weather specialist. He performs well in these conditions. Toprak, throughout his superbike career, has generally struggled when the weather has been like this. Think back to wet weather races even earlier on this campaign. Didn't have the headline results that he's had in other circumstances. But also because the possibility for more riders to get into the mix at the head of the field is that much greater. Think about Michael van der Mark and what he was able to do in Portugal. Think about Tati Mercado. He always goes well in the wet. The number of riders who could get in between Ray and Razgatlioglu will increase exponentially with wet weather. But I must say, Steve, the amount of rain that's coming down now makes me doubt whether we will even be able to start this race at the planned time, which may mean a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card potentially for Toprak Razgatlioglu, because the visibility there is not going to be good enough to go racing, surely.
Yeah, that's biblical rain at this stage, and certainly you're going to expect to see the start delayed for these riders. You can see out of our box again, Michael van der Mark's running off the grid. Quite a few people making their exits from the grid now as well, and you can see as Toprak makes his way to the grid, just these conditions aren't going to be possible to start the race on time.
Yes, I think that was almost foretold, wasn't it? That was an inevitability, because once we saw the rain coming down, the spray in these kind of conditions would be impossible to ride unless you hit the front. So Razgatlioglu with a little bit of pre-race acrobatics to scale the pit wall, and can now make his way back into the garage, which means we can continue to build up what is going to be a fascinating World Championship encounter. This man, Jonathan Rea, the reigning world champion, that's the visibility that we're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely nothing out there right now for these riders, and certainly a bit too dangerous to be going out on this track, especially considering that they haven't been out in wet conditions at any stage here in Mandalika. So a real challenge for everyone, and the right decision being made there by the organisers.
Everyone making their way back to the pit boxes. We saw this for the support class, the Asia Talent Cup races earlier on today as well, although it wasn't raining anything quite like this, I can tell you.
Yeah, and you can see there everyone making their way back into the pits, and they do look like they've been drowned out there, really, and certainly for everyone it's going to be a little bit of a delay now. We'll wait and see what update we get on a start time. Tom Sykes still making his way around, and you can see just how difficult it is out there. Even at the slow speed Sykes is riding around at far too dangerous conditions. Very easy to aquaplane in conditions like this. A lot of standing water is going to be out there.
I'd like to see where Jules Cluzel is at the moment, after we saw him in his undergarments a few minutes ago waiting to get into a pool. He didn't need to get into a pool, he only needed to stand in pit lane.
And it is still warm out there. It's 26 degrees, 27 degrees, so it is very tropical, typical of what we get here in Southeast Asia. And it is actually this kind of downpour that we were waiting for over the last few days. It's threatened to come, but we haven't had anything like it up until now.
Classic kind of weather conditions that we're used to seeing, for example, in Malaysia, as the seat is dried off and the bike dried off as best as possible for Toprak Razgatlioglu.
Yeah, you can see Bono there just using the air guns to clear off as much of that as possible, and that's what you have to do at this stage. Toprak doesn't want to be too cross-eyed when he's out in the bike, but he's still pretty relaxed at this stage as we wait to find out when we'll get a new schedule here, but you can see just how quickly the conditions have changed.
I did say that Toprak has not been known for his wet weather prowess in the past through his career, and to an extent I've probably done him a disservice, because this season he has made a step forward, even if he's clearly not as strong in the wet as he is in the dry.
Yeah, in the dry conditions, Toprak's as good as anyone in the wet conditions. He showed, especially in Catalonia, he's made a big step forward. He was able to lead that race, open up a pretty commanding lead at one stage as well before he had a technical problem, and even though he had that problem, that would have been one of the races that would have given him a big boost in terms of his ability to perform well in those conditions.
I think the race that I call to mind to the greater extent is the Super Pole race in Portimao, where Toprak just dropped backwards through the field once it started raining, ended up finishing in 6th position.